Cassandra, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat with you.
So I just want to start with a little background. We don't have to do your whole life story. I know that's not what you wanted to come on here for, but I want to understand just where you're coming from, a little bit about yourself, and then what led you to seek nutrition coaching in the first place.
hmm Yeah, so I'm a 40-something female. I live in Florida. I have always, as my adult life, been committed to healthy living, working out, but that's been a long progress to learn about what is right for me, what changes my body. So when I came to you, I was not out of shape at all. I was doing group strength training classes. I mean, actual strength training, barbell. I was going to the gym on my own, but I had noticed I was very slowly putting on weight, like maybe 10 pounds over about 3 years. It was just really slowly creeping on there. And I was listening to your podcast. I was loosely following Macro Factor, but not seeing changes, not positive changes. And I really just needed accountability. I needed someone to help me just stay on the path. And that's when I reached out to you.
Cool. So I like how you said, you weren't quote unquote out of shape, but the weight was creeping on. And, I like it when people hear real stories from real people who it's not like you're a total beginner. You're 300 pounds overweight and like don't know what to do at all. It's that you've taken the action, you've done things, you've gotten in shape, you're going to the gym, you even started using Macro Factor, listening to this show. And I encourage people to like suck up the education and try things for yourself and experiment. But still something was going on and you were like, I need to figure it out. So was that the biggest challenge for you then, was just you had tried different things and there was some mystery to be solved? Or like, what do you perceive as the number one thing that you said, no, I really have to have coaching. I really have to have that accountability. What is that?
Yeah, I felt like I was doing things right, but I can look back and sort of pinpoint where I wasn't. I would eat a deficit for 3 days, but then not for 3 days. And so for me, I think I needed the accountability. I needed someone that I knew was going to be looking at my nutrition, every 2 weeks when you evaluate it, and kind of holding me accountable and calling me out if I didn't follow it. And for me, just sort of knowing that I don't want to say pressure, but just someone there was really going to help me.
Yeah, I think support is underrated, right? I mean,
hmm
coaches have coaches too. I've got a lot of mentors and coaches, and the more I've been in this space, the more I want to immediately go and find somebody that knows more than me to help me out. So it sounds like there was frustration with even if you kind of knew the process, there was still something preventing you from really sticking to it. And you're like, just let me lean on someone a little bit, take off some of the, I guess, mental stress. Maybe was there an element of
hmm
that to it?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And then you kind of talked about what you were already trying. What do you think about the approach you were using wasn't working? And the way I want kind of the listener to perceive this is, let's say they said, look, like Cassandra, I've done those things and I know I need to be in a calorie deficit or whatever it is.
hmm
And I know they're going to work. So I'm just going to do it on my own. I hear Cassandra, but I'm not like her. I can do it on my own. Like, I want to understand where that is, because I've been there too. Like, try to do it on my own, thinking, I got this.
hmm Yeah. So I think there were things I wasn't doing them quite right. Like, I was hitting my protein and maybe the calories, but my fats were really high and my carbs were really high. And this is something you called out when I started to go into the deficit. You sort of called out that my carbs and fats were a little excessive. So we cut back on that, and I started to see a little bit of difference in my weight going down.
Cool. And sometimes it is the little things. It's like, boom, revelation on day one. And as a coach, I love that, because I don't want to say it makes my job easy. It more makes it allows the years of times of seeing this with other clients, allows me to bring that to you and say, look, like, go through my Rolodex. People know what a Rolodex is anymore. Go through your Rolodex in your head and say, okay, this is the thing that might be helpful. And if it doesn't work, we go to the next strategy. It's funny you mentioned fats and carbs, because you know how people have a fear of carbs and
hmm
often say, well, I think my carbs are just too high. And a lot of times you get into the data, you're like, no, it's actually the fats that are too high,
hmm
and that's what you're
Yeah.
missing, because you keep trying to cut carbs, but somehow you keep gaining weight. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah, and
yeah,
I
go ahead.
love
Yeah.
fats. I had a very high fat diet. I love my feta cheese and avocado, but it hasn't been that hard to scale back. And we started with the maintenance phase, which I had skipped that when I was trying to do things on my own. I didn't really think it was important, and that was silly because it's very important. It was really helpful to learn like what my body feels like at maintenance, and to also be tracking my foods and thinking, okay, well, I can cut this when I go into a deficit. I can live without that feta. And so that was really helpful for me. And that was how I really learned to sort of trim the carbs and the fats once we got into that deficit phase.
Yeah, and it's great to have those foods you love and like try to figure to get them how do you get them in.
Hmm.
You said something interesting there about maintenance. So did you say you tried to do maintenance before we worked together and like tried to shortcut it, or even when we started, you were impatient to get through it? What's the situation?
No, so when I listened to your podcast before I worked with you, you would mention that it's important to learn your maintenance, and you would always start your clients at maintenance. And I never did that. Like as soon as I went into Macro Factor, I downloaded it, I immediately went into a deficit, and I think that was the wrong thing to do because Macro Factor needs to learn your maintenance to be able to do a deficit or add weight. And I didn't really realize that. And I think I wasted a lot of time watching it adjust the figures, trying to figure out where I should be. So we had us at maintenance for about a month, and it was just very helpful. It taught me to be very intentional about what I was eating, and just learning how my body feels on the right amount of calories. And so, yeah, I'm really glad we did that together.
I love how you frame that. And yeah, I recall it took about a month together. And for anyone
Mhm.
listening, I usually recommend a month to two. But I'll tell you, clients who are dedicated, like you were, who did the work, and honestly, the best coaching experience you're going to have or relationship, if you hire coaches, you've got to do the work too, and that way you're going to accelerate the process together. But a month is a reasonable amount of time. The shortest I've ever done it is maybe 2 weeks, and that's only because someone had already kind of been in maintenance on their own,
Mhm.
coming into me to working with me. And then you said it's really about feeling and understanding your body, which is crucial because fat loss is a big change. It's a big stressor.
Mhm.
It's a big, a different variable affecting your body. It's totally unlike not being in fat loss. Right. So maybe just color for people. What does that mean by getting to understand your body across all the facets that you learned during that period?
Yeah, so, how much energy I had, was really interesting to familiarize myself with by eating at maintenance. Because when you are working with clients, you ask them at every check-in, like, "How are your energy levels?" And my energy levels were awesome. Like, I was just killing it at the gym, killing it with my lifts, and it just sort of taught me, like, when I'm eating right and not going over and not going under, like I'm doing what my body needs, I can do really well in the gym and have energy for my day. And I think that was really important to learn. And so comparatively, when we did go into the deficit, I did feel those energy levels drop a little bit, of course, but I knew my body well enough to sort of understand what was happening.
So that brings up another interesting question about when you talk about energy and feeling this sense of, I guess, thriving during this period, because a lot of people, especially women who've been chronically dieting, almost don't know what that feels like.
Mhm.
And so I've had clients who started the maintenance phase and then they decide they don't even want to do fat loss because they just love how it feels. Now,
Yeah.
that brings up the question, did your goal sort of shift in your head, both the superficial goal of like X number of fat pounds to lose or what have you, and then the deeper goals you had? Did that shift at all from the time like you first hired me, you were all excited, gung ho, like I'm going to lose 20 pounds or whatever, to after the maintenance phase when we started fat loss? Did you have a slightly different perception of what your goal was?
No, not really.
Okay.
I
Okay.
definitely wanted to get that like extra weight off.
Okay.
Yeah. So no, no, for
Okay.
me, I
Cool.
had like my eye on the prize.
All right, fine, fine. So see, audience, that's what's called, I didn't prepare Cassandra ahead of time for any of these questions, and I don't know what the answer is going to be. So as much as I try to lead her to a certain answer, she was honest with that she knew what she wanted. And honestly, at working with you the whole time, I knew you were the type of client that I would love to work with because, you're ready to go. Like you're focused. So then that gets to our approach because people are like, well, what did she do? I know she wanted to get fat loss and she was going to the gym. And like if you want to work with me, you should already be lifting. That's what I'm telling anybody who listens. Otherwise, listen to the podcast, listen to this case study with Cassandra, and go start lifting weights and reach out for help. But once we started working together, what were some of the big changes in your approach to nutrition and even to training?
hmm Yeah, I made a lot of changes, big and small. So I had been doing group strength training classes, as I mentioned, and then going to the gym on my own a couple times a week. But I definitely hit a plateau with that. So for me, I did take on a personal trainer, which I know is not feasible for everyone, but that helped. My partner is a great weightlifter, so I asked him to start helping me more in the gym, and that kind of pushed me outside of my comfort zone, and definitely it was sore every day. I also made some smaller changes, like I work remotely, but I didn't have a standing desk. So I got a standing desk and a desk treadmill, and I make myself take 10-minute breaks throughout the day to get on that treadmill. And I hit my step goals that you wanted us to hit, minimum 8,000 steps a day. So I was really good at that. And then nutrition, it adjusted quite a bit, especially in the deficit phase. I'm a morning workout person, 8 a.m. And I believe that I had to have a meal in my stomach before I worked out. And working with you, I learned to adjust my foods more strategically. So I started with the protein shake, and then I worked out and I was fine. And then I went on to what I call second breakfast afterwards, where I fueled my body a bit better. And then that kind of kept me full so I could eat lunch later, and I would do a higher carb lunch and then a lighter dinner. And that took a while, like to sort of tweak that in a way that like benefited me and my schedule and my workout, but like learning how to eat strategically and adjust my foods around exercise helped a ton.
That's really good, because sometimes it's people simplify these things, like you should have protein and carbs before a workout. And I say that a lot to people who are just not eating at all. In your case, we had to listen to your body, look at your biofeedback, which, by the way, every time you checked in with me, you would share, okay, here's my digestion, my soreness, my energy, my sleep, etc. And we can kind of see, okay, this is trending one way or the other, or I'm struggling with this, or I'm feeling wiped out in the gym. Let's strategize over meal timing, not necessarily what you're eating or how much you're eating. It's, sometimes when. You also talked about the personal training and having a partner who's into weightlifting. So again, that's great support, which is why it's awesome when you can be with others, even if it's not like an intimate partner, but a friend, a training partner, somebody you work out with, to kind of push each other and have that same environment. And by the way, again, for folks listening, like there's a whole spectrum of how you get support. So notice how Cassandra had a personal trainer. I have a lot of clients who have their own personal trainers. I have clients who lean on me for programming and feedback. And I have clients who are kind of in between, where they might program for themselves, or I might give them a template, and then they're pretty self-sufficient, and then they reach out for form checks. So it kind of depends on what you need. And I think that's a great thing. And then the standing desk, the desk treadmill. So I love that you mentioned walking, because I think when you and I started together, I definitely talked about the importance of it. I don't know how forceful I was, because now I'm even more like, we've got to get your steps up, because I'm even more of an advocate of the importance for fat loss and for metabolic health. Well, like, what are your thoughts on that topic in general about steps?
Oh, I'm a huge advocate of walking and getting steps. I used to be a runner back in my 30s, and my knees really hate me now for it. And I just wish I had known that, walking just has so many great qualities, and like I can go for a good 30-minute walk outside and just feel like I've had the best workout. I encourage everyone to do it. It's just really good. It's just good for the body.
100%. No excuses too, right? Like I think anybody can find a way. I mean, you did the stand-up desk and the desk treadmill. Others might, pace around on their meetings, and others might have to go for walks. But and I know you have a dog too. That probably helps, right?
Yes, forces me outside for sure.
It's a great reason to have a dog. I guess another thing that comes to mind then is, how did this whole thing feel compared to what you did before? Because I know we talked before we recorded about a lot of this is really how you felt as a person, or what you were doing, the confidence, the mindset. You know what I mean? Just generally, how did it feel? Did it feel more frictionless? Did it, tell us about that?
Yeah, it felt way more frictionless. I'm a very structured person, and I felt like working with you really helped me keep a structure around everything. Tracking my nutrition and my workouts, and for me, that's very motivating. I like to feel like my house is in order, and when it is, like I'm in order and I feel good. So, yeah, it felt really good. And then when I started seeing progress, like that's just it just it boosted my confidence, and it was just awesome to see those changes. And I have never done progress photos before because I don't think anyone really likes to do those, but doing them with you, I'm really glad it forced me, and I could see that difference. I mean, you don't see it in yourself day to day, but when you pull a photo 3 months apart, it's really great to see, like, oh wait, yeah, there's a lot less fat there. So I appreciated that was incorporated into our process.
Yeah, it is. Interestingly, it's a very delicate subject, and there are definitely clients who don't even want to give me the pictures to begin with, and I don't pressure them because I'm like, look, ultimately it is for you. And you and I were talking before we recorded that I hardly ever use before and after photos, even if they're fantastic, only because I don't think that's the message we're trying to convey, is just that it's about the physical appearance. Even though, hey, side bonus, yeah, you're going to look much better because you're healthier and you're fitter.
Mhm.
So it's an interesting topic. Like, tell clients about how that experience was. Like, how did I react? How did I use your photos during the process? Because it's usually pretty minimal, but maybe you can tell us.
It's very minimal. In the feedback videos, I think twice in the past 5 months, you actively kind of pulled up the photos and pointed out the difference you saw, which I appreciated because you were pointing out like muscular growth that
Mhm.
I was more focused on like, oh yeah, my waist is trimmer, but you're like, no, I can see the muscle in your arms. Like it definitely helped me to see your perspective of them.
Cool. Yeah.
But no,
Yeah. Cool.
you
Yeah.
didn't focus on them a whole lot. Like, you're not
Right.
analyzing them every week, so if people are nervous about it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's sensitive, and I know people have. I mean, body image is a very personal thing. So I think I'm like, if it were me, if I ever had a coach share photos, I almost don't want to send the photos, but if you got to treat it that way. So I just want people to understand that that's what it is. It's not like every week I'm like, look how much skinnier or fatter you are, and look at this and that, look at your butt and your hips, and it's not like that at all. It's very
Yeah.
simple, objective, as needed. Um, okay, so then speaking of results, then like, what are some of the wins you got? So like we worked together for about 6 months, and you had a month of maintenance and then fat loss phase. Maybe just walk us through what the periodization looked like.
Mhm. Yeah, so in total, I'm down about 11 pounds, and I get quarterly DEXA scans, which that for those who don't know, you lay flat, it scans you. It's very unforgiving. Because you're laying flat, it sends you an outline of your body, your fat, your lean body mass, your bone. My body fat decreased by 5%, and my lean mass went up a little bit. So that's the muscle that I've put on. Um, there's also other changes that you notice, like my resting heart rate decreased by from like 70s to upper 50s, and that's amazing. I've never had anything below 70 for resting heart rate, so that was really great to see. And my clothes fit better, I look better. I mean, there's just so many changes, and I want to point out that my transformation wasn't dramatic. Like 10 pounds might not sound like to a lot of people, but for me, I was having a really hard time getting that off, and I didn't have a lot of weight to lose. So for me, it was transformational.
Yeah, and the fact that you added muscle, I think we had a part of our conversation at one point was like, you think you're good. Like, in other words, you were super happy with the muscle at that point. You weren't even as concerned about losing any more fat. Is that right? I seem to recall that at one point you were like,
Um,
I don't know. It seemed like some sort of shift in your mindset around the body composition. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say there was a mindset shift where I really started to just become proud of the muscle that I had, and it was showing, and the strength I was building in the gym. And I mentioned I used to do these group classes, and I stepped back from those to focus on my other training. But I did go back recently, and I hadn't seen my peers in a few months, and someone said, Cassandra's looking jacked. And there was like this ripple of approvals and agreements. And it just felt really good to to hear that and to see that. So I think at some point, like I knew I needed to lose the fat to see the muscle, but that started to happen. And I just started to feel really proud of the muscle that I was building.
Yeah, I mean, you were doing both at the same time, so it definitely even accelerated the process. You sent me one. I remember one day you sent me a photo. You were like doing lat pull downs or something. A photo of
Hmm.
your back. And by the way, I love backs in general because that's something that I personally like have a decent back, whereas some people struggle with that and others struggle with other parts of their physique. And yeah, she just looking jacked. You could just see like the Christmas tree down her spine and like her delts and like that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about when I comment on physique. It's just good to see the development across all of that. Which is, and it was exciting because you just out of the blue were like, look how excited I am at this. And then the external validation, there's nothing wrong with that if you're not outwardly just seeking that. So the fact that you just showed up and they're like, hey, you look jacked. It's like, okay, great.
Yeah.
I'm doing the right thing. So then so that's a physical, speaking of that, then the mindset or your lifestyle, we try to work around your lifestyle. Like with my clients, we
Mhm.
try to work around what you're doing, even though there's change involved. So what's different, both mindset and lifestyles since we started?
Mhm. So let's talk about lifestyle first.
Mhm.
What one of the areas which was a sticky point and still is challenging is I travel. I travel for work once or twice a quarter. We also have a fifth wheel we take out. We travel personally, and so learning to keep my nutrition in check while on the road is was hard, and we had to work through that. And I think the what we kind of agreed upon was going to maintenance when I do that. And so rather than keeping in a deficit, because that's really hard to do when you're eating out and
Mhm.
buying food to go. So I just kind of committed to that and looking at restaurant nutrition meals ahead of traveling and finding something that sort of fit my nutritional guidelines and getting that and just doing my best to not go out from that. So that helped a ton. But also, one of the reasons I wanted to work with you is I didn't feel like I had to cut out things that I enjoy in my life. I love ice cream. I love nothing but cakes. Like I still wanted to be able to eat those and I could. And it's not like every day, but like, I was still could make room for that in my life and I was still seeing weight loss. So I think that was something I really appreciated and also just helped me with my mindset sort of realize like I can still enjoy my life. I also pretty much cut out alcohol, which has been awesome. And you did a podcast on this, but I allowed myself to start drinking diet sodas again.
Mhm.
I used to demonize those, like I'm gonna get cancer, but actually I really like diet soda and kind of like I gave that to myself, and it sort of kept my sweet tooth at bay, and I think was a good, certainly better than the alcohol, and helped me maintain my goals. So there was just definitely like just some lifestyle changes that I took a little bit of time to incorporate. And then mindset, that's a harder one, but I feel like once you see your body changing, you're willing to just sort of do what you need to do to keep going with it. Seeing those changes helped a ton and just helped me really commit to our program.
I hope everybody takes that message in right now because we've talked about the answer to motivation is not discipline or willpower. It's taking action and getting a result. And then you get motivated. It's like a flywheel. And I see it over and over and over again. And I feel really bad for folks who don't take that step. Or if they take the step, maybe it's the wrong step or they don't have the support or education. And even the things you just listed off regarding travel and alcohol and diet soda and everything, and that it took you a little time to incorporate it, those are all key messages here. Because you took a little step here, a little step here, literally more steps, another step over here, and they just sort of built on themselves in a I don't want to say easy because it took effort, but like a totally doable way, even when you're in fat loss. And what I don't want this podcast to be is like, let's go through every single strategy that Cassandra used so that you can use it too. It's the principles of, making it work around your lifestyle. So I really love that. And I always like to ask this because you've learned a lot. You probably learned even more than you realize you've learned, right? If you just like sat down and wrote it out. But I always like this thought experiment. If you went back to yourself before we got started, what would you tell that person that would even accelerate it further?
That's a good one.
And you could even go back further in time if that makes it easier.
Hmm. Hmm. Um, I don't know. I think I would tell her to just not be afraid to tweak things and adjust things and do what she needed to do to reach her goals. I mean, I definitely was forced to do that with you. I forced sounds like a bad thing, but it's not. Like I just you really challenged me to sort of think about things differently, and it really helped me achieve my goals. So that would probably be my suggestion to her 6 months ago.
That's
Six
a,
months
that's a
ago.
great, yeah. And I know you did that. So I guess what she would be doing is doing it even faster and quicker and sooner, maybe.
Yeah. Hmm.
There
Yeah.
is there's something called a forcing function, right? In math or engineering or whatever. I always pull these things out of my butt. Where they use the word force can be a positive in what you're talking about, in that something that didn't exist, now it exists. It's a force. It's a push, right? It's like Newton's
Hmm.
whatever law. Um,
Yeah.
it's like you can't help but be like pushed along. It's like somebody's here
Yeah.
pushing you. Can't. No, 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 no. Okay, no, I'm going to do it. And then combined with all this tracking and everything. Okay. Oh, I know what I wanted to ask you. Speaking of the tracking, you said you're a structured person and appreciated that. What if somebody's listening and says, I'm not that kind of person? I'm kind of willy nilly. I don't like data. I don't like to weigh myself. Like, I'm just curious what your thoughts are. Could this process work for them? Or do you think it's like a certain type of person needs to work with a certain type of coach?
I think I'm someone who loves the data and the entering things so much. It's hard for me to understand
Fair
people who
point.
might not be
Me
natural to
too. Me
that.
too.
I would really encourage them to just commit themselves to tracking for maybe a week and get it like a sense and make sure that they understand like what what 3 ounces of meat looks like or what 80 grams of raspberries looks like, and then like maybe they could sort of not track, but I just think that it's just such a benefit and holds you so accountable, and it's really eye opening. And calories add up very quickly, and if you're not tracking those, it's really really easy to go over. So
So you're saying it's easier to track and have confidence in what you're doing and know what you're doing than to not
mhm.
track and just be totally lost.
Yes,
Kind of what you're
yeah.
saying. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
also the tracking, it doesn't take a lot of time out of your day. So every morning when I make my protein shake, I pull out macro factor and I add in what I think I'm going to eat for the day. And it takes me 2 minutes. And macro factor is really good at like following your algorithm of food, I guess, and suggesting like what you think you're going to put in at that time. It's usually right at the top. I mean, it takes me 2 minutes, and then as I make the meal, I weigh it. Again, it takes me 5 seconds, and I just adjust it, and it's there. It's not. I know some people just aren't inclined to that, but it really is very simple, and it's just a habit that you have to make for yourself.
Yeah. Totally agree. I think you just got to do it. That was your advice, is like, just try it out, because you might be, people say that they don't like something until they do it. And then, whoa,
Hmm.
I used to be that way just about macros in general. Like, I tried it years ago. The app was terrible. So it was slow, too much friction. I
Yeah.
didn't know what to do with the number. I didn't know even what my targets were. And so, of course, it didn't work. But if it works for you and you get the result, then you'll see how amazing something like that could be. Um, all right, is there anything else about like nutrition science, or let's say your metabolism, or maybe something specific to women that could be helpful, somebody listening, that you learned through this process? I'm not trying to lead you to any specific answer, just, how we track your expenditure and we talk about
Yeah.
stress and things like that. Anything come to mind?
Can we talk about weight trends?
Sure, let's do it. One of my
Yeah.
favorite
So you,
topics.
yes, you did a podcast on this, but I think for people, especially women, the number on the scale carries so much weight, and it took me a while to um, understand that the weight trend is far more important than what's on the scale day to day. And when we're working with you, we weigh in every day, tracking a macro factor, and there are some days where I would get really frustrated by what I saw on the scale, and I would pull up macro factor and look at the weight trend. and there's a light purple line in the background that I think is your actual weight. And that thing is all over the place. It's up, down, up, down. But then the weight trend, the solid dark purple line, was always going down, always. So even during those periods where I was plateauing and just feeling really frustrated, I'd look at macro factor and it would sort of be my little ally encouraging me, because that weight trend was always going down. And it just takes time, and over time you get there. So that helped me in sort of not putting so much value on the scale weight every day.
A lot of people need to hear that. They really do. And that principle applies to lots of data points, right? Because you go to the gym one day and your lifts aren't quite what they are normally. You don't just give up and say, like, that's a reflection of your entire training program. It's just one bad, quote unquote, bad day. It's not even a bad day. Yeah. It's a day that you learn from. Same thing with your calorie level. Like, did I ever get on you for like being 50 calories off, or even hundreds of calories off if you had a bad week? Hopefully I never berated you for that. It was more of, here's data, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, sometimes you say, oh, a couple days where you were a little high, but I never felt bad about it. Like,
yeah.
I always felt comfortable communicating with you of like, I had to travel, or work was very stressful, and I just kind of stress ate a little bit. Like, I always felt very comfortable in our check-ins, putting that in. So you sort of knew what was going on in my life, and I never felt judged at all. I always felt comfortable. Yeah.
Yeah, and Cassandra's talking about the times when I numbers attract me. So when I look at the data, I'll see like highs and lows, and I'll highlight them. Sometimes I use yellow or maybe red. I like in my head try to avoid red because it looks like bad, and I don't mean to say that. But I'll be like, yeah, here we have some outliers. Let's talk about what might have happened, and go look on those days and see what happened. And there's data for you. So all right, so you results wise, a lot of mindset stuff, physique improvement. You're stronger. You lost fat. All right. So last thing to wrap this up. I know there's some people watching who are in the same spot you were a few months ago. Maybe they even have a lot more progress to go. Maybe they're not training consistently yet, whatever. And they're struggling in some way. Maybe it's to lose fat. Maybe they've tried macros and it hasn't worked for them. What would you say to them? Like, if they're on the fence about what to do, what would you say to them?
Well, I tell them to hire you as a coach for sure.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, it just helps to have someone else being a second set of eyes in your life. I mean, we talked about the accountability, but I spent a lot of time the past 10 years or so learning about nutrition and weightlifting, and I still learned so much more in my process with you that really helped me achieve my goals. And I think if it's really important to you to dial it in, having a coach to help you is essential. And it's an investment, but it's an investment in yourself, your health, your future. So I would encourage them to do that.
Awesome. Yeah. So you heard it from Cassandra. And by the way, we have multiple ways to support people, all the way from free things like our Facebook group through lower budget, all the way to one-on-one coaching. So I'm not trying to exclude people if you need the help. So keep that in mind. Is there anything you wish I'd asked, or a topic you wanted to bring up that I didn't bring up?
Just on what you said, you have a Facebook group that's really good. I don't post in there a lot, but I'm really impressed by sort of the quality of the questions in the post. So for people who might not be ready to hire a coach, I'd say start there. That's where I started before I decided to hire you as a coach. And it definitely influenced my decision to go with you. And I learned a lot from that group as well. So that's my final thought. I think we've kind of covered most everything that I've learned. It's been a really great process.
Well, it's been amazing talking to you. If anybody wants to reach out to you, since you're in the Facebook group, they should just join the Facebook group and then they'll find you in there. And we'll include a link to that in the show notes. And also, I was thinking the other way. I don't think you and I took advantage. Did you do the free call with me at the beginning? I forget, or you just like signed up?
No, I emailed you and then
we just took off because you were ready. You're ready. But if you're hesitant, you're listening, I do a 15-minute call all the time with folks. And that's not a sales pitch. And again, you didn't experience that, but it's a lot like 15 minutes of this conversation we just had basically just chatting about what your goals are and then what the next steps. Anyway, thank you again for sharing your story. I really appreciate you doing this, Cassandra. I hope people are super inspired about what they can achieve, and I'm really excited to see what's next for you.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been such a fun process the past 5 months, and it was really great to chat with you about it.
You're an amazing client, Cassandra, an amazing person as well. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much.